Man, welcome to the Blueprint, man. Here we are, the Blueprint. This is the Center of the Business first episode, a practice run of the first episode, getting ready for the Center of Business and Entrepreneurship. And I am welcomed by the leader of this, man, the matriarch of this, the point guard, the Kareem, the Magic Johnson of the whole thing, man. How we doing today, Dr. Taylor?
Man, I'm doing good. Thank you for those kind words, man. I'm ready to get into some conversations, see where this goes.
Yeah, before we get real started, man, it's just I appreciate you. I want to give my utmost respect and thank you for letting me be a part of this. This is something that I feel like the initiative in building this is going to be something bigger than me and you can even imagine and think about right now. The 10, 15 years later, coming back as an alumni, double time, both of us alumni, coming back double time after my master's to just see where the center takes off, see what the school presents and takes off with this idea, man, and run with it.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Sounds good.
So, man, give us the backstory, man. Who is George Taylor? Where is George Taylor from, man?
Man, where do I start? Okay, so I'm just a little country man from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
I'm the middle child. And you know what? I graduated in 1988, and I won't never forget this, Dre. My parents asked me the question, what are you going to do as far as college and getting a job? And the reason why that question was so important is because my father was a Morehouse man.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a nurse. And so they believe in the concept of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they asked me as a couple, what you going to do, I said, I am not going to college because I'm just not ready for college. And the first thing that my dad said to me was, well, you're not staying here. He made that very clear that a man's supposed to work.
Yep.
You're not going to sit and lay on the couch and just sponge off your parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I went straight into the Navy. So I served a distinguished enlisted to officer career, 24 years in the Navy.
Wow.
Started off as an E1, scrubbing the boat, scrubbing. Now, I came in, I was up here thinking I'm Tom Cruise. Then I got to the place and they said, I said, so where's my little butter bars and all that? They said, man, you don't get no butter bars, man. You're going to get up there and you're going to scrub this ship because you don't have a job. And the reason why I opened up my story with that event is because it let me know the importance of planning, but it also let me know the importance of knowing what you're getting yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dre, I made a commitment to myself, and the commitment was this. I was going to work my tail off to become the top person in any endeavor that I undertook. That was my goal. So what ended up happening is I became the top enlisted leader in my company camp. And when I did that, I was automatically given a school. So what they let me know is that if I applied myself, then I could be at the very least in the top 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I go to A school. It was a yeoman A school.
Mm-hmm.
And a yeoman is essentially an administrative assistant. And I said to myself, I want to be at the top. Now, here's the deal about that. They said that if you're at the top of this class, then you automatically are going to advance at the E4 level. So, again, I grinded it out.
Mm-hmm.
I was number one out of a class of 25 people.
Mm-hmm.
I made it to E4. I went out to the USS Saratoga, and I saw so many mentors in the forms of chiefs and officers. And the first thing I told myself is, I got to become an officer. But first, I'm going to become a chief.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked my tail off. In 1997, I became a chief petty officer at the age of 26.
Salute to that, man.
Hey, man, I thought I was so cool.
Hey,
let me give you some context of this. I know you're about to ask me something. So here's the context. Tupac was in style, right? And I was this young chief, 25 years old, walking around. And I'm up here trying to wear like baggy pants. I'm trying to let my khakis sag.
Yeah.
And I remember that the younger sailors looked at me and they said, Chief Taylor, man, you can't let your pants sag. Come on now. You know better than that. And the reason why that story is important in knowing who I am, because it let me know that people are always watching.
Yep.
When you're in a leadership position, you got to make sure that you're a person of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So to continue with the story of who I am, in 1999, I was commissioned as a naval officer.
Okay.
28 years old. I hit my goal. I got to moving. I got to shaking. I served all over the country. And at the ripe age of 28 years old, I was already a department head.
Wow.
And so being a department head on board the USS Frank Cable, that let me know about large-scale leadership because I had a department of 150 people. And this is a good story, too. As I was leading, I realized that I try to do everything myself. And I had this guy, his name was Chief Joe Gant, tall, one of them handsome Denzel Washington looking brothers, right? He come up to me, he said, Lieutenant Taylor, you losing us. And I said, how am I losing you? He said, you think you can run this department by yourself, but you forget you got this team of middle managers that are ready to help you. And if you just trust me and your other middle managers, then you don't have to stay here 20 hours a day, sleeping at your desk, and you can get more credibility and more things done. So the reason why that story was important is because it let me know to trust and empower people, give them a general direction of where they should go, and the rest can take care of itself.
Yeah.
So I did the Navy. I did 14 years active duty. Then I started going into the consulting world, right?
Gotcha.
Because I'm still in the Navy, but I'm interacting with consultants that are helping to advance the human resource strategy of the Navy.
Gotcha.
And I started looking at these people from Booz Allen, Hamilton, and all these places, and I said to myself, you know what? I can do this. So that consulting bug got into me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to become a consultant, and I'm going to serve out the rest of my military career as a reserve officer. That was a good move because I was able to still wear the uniform, but also learn the intricate nature of how important it is to help organizations advance their strategy.
Yeah.
And to this day, Dre, I can tell you for a fact that when it comes to the strategy planning and execution, oh man, I eat that up. Whether you're a startup, whether you're a mature organization, whether you a government organization, whether you're a nonprofit, if you're working from a blank slate and you are willing to listen, oh, we can work some magic.
Yeah.
So now I have my love for family, strong father. Now I have my love for goal setting. I have my love for listening to others, Chief Gant. I have my love for leadership, and now I have my love for advising others. Then when I retired from the Navy in 2012, the first question I asked myself is, what's next? What are you going to do? But then I said to myself, you know what? I'm always training. I'm always teaching. So why not become a PhD and become an academic? So in 2012, I started grinding out my doctoral degree, actually a little bit before that because I started taking classes while I was still in the Navy, and I got my doctoral degree in 2014.
Wow.
So in 2014, oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, I gotta give you something on that because no, you can't undermine that, man. Let's not let the elephant in the room be clear. We two young brothers, black men, African American men, and to be a polished man and have a PhD. Where I come from, Minneapolis, not too many have that. So that ain't something light to not give credit to. And I want to mention too, I want to just go back a little bit, rewind on just your time in the Navy. To be clear, you was able to get your bachelor's and master's while you were serving in the Navy.
That's a great question. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So just having that education side too. It wasn't that you was neglecting it, like you said. It's funny that the show is called The Blueprint because you was putting the blueprint all together and puzzling the pieces. And I think that's a pillar to being an entrepreneur and being in the business of business. Being a leader in business, you got to know the vision and have the plan written out. I'm a big believer in God, and in the Bible it says, talk about making it plain, writing the vision out, and running with it. And so everything with me starts with the paper and the pad, man, pen and the pad, and it's just making sure that you can see it. And then once you can see it written down, then like you said, the strategy side of things and creating it, it don't make it hard. So I want you to go back a little bit to see how you was always having the education side. And like you said, you needed to go to the academia side of things, but you built on the strong values of what it is to be a man, leadership, integrity, and toughness. Now, how did you incorporate that now to where you was once you got to that PhD? What was after that?
Together real nice, man. So what I started doing is the PhD teaches you how to investigate problems. And to also find out, do you really have a problem? Right? And so I started getting into, literature and get into. It's one thing to consult and tell people best practices, but it's another thing to research the problem and really assess, do you even have a problem at all, number one. And then not only to assess that piece, but also come up with interventions that are evidence-based and scientifically based. And, when I first started academia, I was kind of just going off my professional experience. But then when I completed my PhD, it brought additional rigor to the interventions and brought more credibility to exactly what I was trying to get the organization to do. And people can tell when you read up, right? It's one thing I tell people this all the time. You can be motivational and you can be inspiring, and that's good, right? When we go to church, we're inspired, right? And I don't know what kind of church you grew up in, but I know what kind of church I grew up in. I grew up in the Catholic church, but when I got married, my wife was Baptist, so we kind of met in the middle, and we said we're going to do non-denominational. And so when I did the non-denominational churches, I saw people like Mike Todd and everything, and man, can they inspire. They're good at what they're doing. But that method of communication doesn't carry over to everywhere you go, right? At some point, you're going to have to put meat on the bones, right? And so the reason why I bring that up is because, yes, motivation is good. Aspirational is good. But you also need to be detailed and specific in your language. And so getting this PhD allowed me to be very concrete when I communicate to other people, especially diverse audiences, right? But to your point, that's what academia brought me. Academia gave me the ability to research problems. It gave me the ability to come up with interventions backed by evidence. And it gave me the ability to communicate in very concrete, specific language to people that are trying to address a pressing need to advance their organizations or pursue their academic careers.
Before I lose this thought, I want to say this to piggyback off what you said. I didn't want you to go away from this. Do you think now to society today and now the advancement of technology and everything, do people not need an education to be successful business people?
I'm going to say it like this. Education comes in many forms. So I think you still need an education. The question is, what does education look like?
Got you.
So for some people, education is a 4-year degree, a graduate degree, maybe even a PhD. For some people, formal education may stop at high school, but you're still educating yourself. You have coaches, you have mentors, you have books. You have so many ways that you can educate yourself. Like right now, you and I, we can go to our laptop computers and we can get a master's in life, in business, almost from the touch of a screen. Almost we can say for free, right? So as an academic, I strongly believe in the value of education, but I also recognize that people are different and people need different things. So it depends on the individual. Like I didn't bring this up in my story, but I think it's an important part of my story. First and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And so my first company was in 2001 with my consulting company. Then I went to real estate, and at the peak of my real estate career, I had 20 single-family homes. I had 4 apartment buildings, and I had a $3.5 million net worth.
Look at this. I didn't know you was a serial entrepreneur,
I
man.
forgot all about this. I didn't forget about it, but I was trying to find a way that we could wrap this in here. And, man, I'm telling you, okay, another important part of being a leader is knowing when to know it's not just you. And also knowing to be humble. And, right before we got the taping, Mavi made a trip. Oh, how humble, right? Because I like to have fun. But at the end of the day, it's so important to be humble. It's so important to trust other people and empower other people. And to get through this story kind of quickly, when I was building my real estate portfolio and I had a $3.5 million worth of real estate, I was under assumption at 31, 32 years old that it was all me, that I put this together. I thought I had a little swag about myself. When I went to the bank, they would escort me in the bank. I was like, yeah, look at, you know what I'm saying? I thought I would Diddy, because Diddy is who I grew up on, right? But people forget 2008 hit.
That was crazy. Man, I can share a story too.
Man, share that story. I'm going to get this out and please talk. But I found out that no one could pay me. So I'm like, okay, I got $3.5 million worth of real estate. No one's paying me. So what do I need to do? So I went up and I called every lender that I had a debt with. And I said, you know what? We can work something out, or you can have these properties back, because I don't have $3.5 million I can pay you. And so what they really taught me was the importance of negotiation, the importance of being humble, because Dre, that brought me to my knees. And I know I'm saying this story kind of like in a very casual way, but you have to know what was at risk. What was at risk was my security clearance. What was at risk was my family. What was at risk was my Navy career. What was at risk was my, my future career. And I remember being in this office. I had a nice office downtown Memphis, and my wife, we weren't married at the time, but we were engaged. She knocked on the door because I was literally sleeping in my office, just worried, trying to figure out how I'm going to pay all these bills. And she said, what is going on with you? And I said, you know what? I feel like I'm letting you down. I feel like I can't provide for you, so I don't even know why you would want to marry somebody like me. And my wife said, you're the same person that I met that wanted to be an entrepreneur. You're the same person that was that naval officer, so confident, so proud. And she said, so I'm not going to allow you to have a pity party. You're going to come home with me. You're going to realize that it was never you by yourself. And you're going to put some spirituality in this and know that you can't walk alone.
Man, that's what having a good woman for.
Man, hey, you got to have them, man. You got to have them.
You got to have one, hey, because they going to set you straight, because that's where you pick up. And I was going to say that. Where did your wife play a role in your success, man? Because you didn't do this by yourself, obviously. So you sharing that kind of more so now. That was back in 01, 08. We're in 2023 now. Now how does things look a little bit clearer going through them war wounds and them war stories?
You know what? I can honestly say this. My wife is my best friend. My wife can take any situation when I feel like I'm down and out and let me see the positive in it. And one day, are you married yet?
No.
Okay. When you find the right person, you know it, because my wife and I don't even have time for silly conversations. And so what is a silly conversation? Worried about where your wife at, it's a silly conversation, or your husband at. Worried about, toilet seat up, toilet seat down, it's a silly conversation. Or, who is bearing the brunt of the work? Those are silly conversations. My wife and I talk about things like, where are you going? Know that you have a champion. Where's the spirituality in this? Who's on your team, and are you talking to your team? Are you in spaces that allow you to be your best self? Are you getting treated fairly and equitably compared to everybody else? Are you really being your best self? These are the type of conversations that my wife and I have. And if you notice, I didn't say one thing about money. My wife and I never talk about money.
Crazy, you're an entrepreneur, and business is all about money.
You know what? This is a crazy story. When we first got married, Dre, I was like, okay, we married now. So we're going to put my bank account with your bank account. Your kids going to listen to me like they're my kids and everything. And my wife said, remember, we knew each other 10 years before this happened. She said, you don't have to start getting brand new now. She said, my kids love you, so that's off the table. And she said, why we need to combine money? She said, it was working just fine. She said, I know you here. You don't owe me anything. All you owe me is your love. And to this day, things like bank accounts and money never get in the way. And what they did for me, it made me want to do better for her. It had a reverse effect. And to this day, she still doesn't talk about it. Of all the arguments that we have, and you can almost count those just on two hands, we never, out of 22 years, counting the years that we were together in 2001, talked about money.
Wow. And it's crazy because of what you do in your line of work and your businesses and how you inspire me and the students that you work with. And even then, it's not even about money, but we know this thing of business. Money is always attached. That word is always attached. So it's crazy for you to say that. Do you feel like now what you're doing and how you've been motivated and what your wife has supported you is how you teach these students, even here at SMSU, in a different way, that to value the intangible things and look at things from a retrospect rather than, like you just said, simple-minded and silly conversations, because that carries into business as well.
Yeah.
Why are we going to worry about the no's when all it takes is one yes?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that question. And so I think my wife complimented that. I mean, that's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
My family was very successful. So real quick, I always believe that when you tell your story, you need to go at least one generation back and ideally 2 generations if you got the time.
Mm-hmm.
So my father was a Morehouse man, HBCU brother, HBCU.
Shout out HBCU.
And HBCUs don't play.
No, not at all.
Especially Morehouse man.
No, it's hard. It's hard to get in there. Yeah.
And so my father comes out, and he was the first person of color to be the personnel director for the city of Chattanooga.
Wow.
Big deal. My granddaddy, Morehouse man, Dr. Taylor, he's a senior. And so he delivered babies. Now his father, my great-grandfather, doctor, delivered babies. And to this day, I can enter some spaces, and they already know who I am. I went into a courtroom like 3 or 4 years ago, and the guy looked at me, he said, George Taylor. Never saw him before in my life. And what he was saying is, you look just like your father. So my father had left a legacy. You know what I'm saying? My father had already laid down a blueprint. His father laid down a blueprint. And his father laid down a blueprint. So I always felt in the back of my mind that my role was to carry that torch in a special way. So from my father, I get this thirst for knowledge. I get this love for deep thinking, but I can't forget mom's. So my mom brings that entrepreneurial spirit. And why is that so? Because her mother was very entrepreneurial. She had to be a housekeeper, pretty much started her own housekeeping business. And then her mother was just one generation removed from slavery.
Wow.
So she was in the fields in Mississippi, in the fields in Tennessee. And not only was she doing cotton, she could not feed her family on the money she was making from sharecropping. So she started a candy store.
Wow.
And so I'm in school, and my mom's already telling me, you need to get a business. She was telling me to buy a Chick-fil-A when I was in like 19 years old. She said, you need to take that Navy money and buy you a Chick-fil-A. I said, Mom, I don't even know what you're talking about. She said, they just cost $50,000. Find a way to bring or buy a Chick-fil-A. But also from my mother, I get this high degree of emotional intelligence.
Yep.
And so you know this. You know I'm a little touchy-feeling. I dap you up, hug you, doing all that stuff. Yeah. That's my mother.
Yeah.
And to read people and to have a heart. And so when I started working, I already had an intellectual curiosity. I already had that high emotional intelligence. And I think Phyllis just brought out those attributes and let me know that it was okay to put that on display, right? Because I never been a materialistic person, because I never was a person in need. But I always kept a chip on my shoulder, but it wasn't like money driven. Yeah. It was more like impact driven. And Maria, who's in the background here, she'll tell you, we don't never quit, right? We don't never stop. I don't care what the challenge is. I'm going to find a way to advance the challenge. And when I get knocked down, I going back to Phyllis, my wife, she'll say, I don't know, don't put your head down. And then she'll say, you need to walk in it. Walk into your greatness. Own your gifts. You know what I'm saying? And she always tell me constantly, over and over again, we don't do pity parties here. So that's the value of Phyllis.
See how I never asked one time about the definition of a blueprint, and this whole time you gave us the whole thing right there. I not once said, I wasn't cheesy with it. What is the definition of blueprint? I let the flow of the conversation go, man, and look where we at now. So before we get up out of here, man, I really want you to kind of give a little taste, a little preview of your vision for the center, where it was and where it's going.
Okay, so when I got here in 2020, I got to shout out to this guy. His name is Doug Simon. Doug was a professor. I don't know if you know Doug Simon. He was the former business chair for the Business Innovation Strategy Department. He put on paper the concept for the center. It was a 2-page grant proposal that finally got approved by the outgoing president. And then he went back to the political science department. And he said, hey, look, it's your puppy now. What are you going to do with it? And I said, you know what? Whatever I do with it, I can't do it without you. You the one that wrote this up. You the one that put the vision of it. And he was also the Sam Walton Fellow for Enactus. And so he said, do you want to help me out with Enactus? I said, absolutely, I want to help you out with Enactus. And so the center kind of morphed into this vision of, being this playground, so to speak, for Enactus to try different projects and initiatives. But what I told Doug is, I want you to stay beside me. I want you to be a part of this, but we call it the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So we need to bring in the student entrepreneurs, but you also have some language about being cross-disciplinary in nature. So we need to bring in the whole university. And Doug, of course, wrote it. He said, yeah, that's fine. How do you want to do it? And so for the first thing we're going to do is start reaching out to the students and saying which students are serious about entrepreneurship. And Dre, when I talk about entrepreneurship, I'm not just talking about business startup. I'm not just talking about business ownership. I'm talking about having that entrepreneur mindset that no matter if you're an employee or you start up your business, that you're thinking differently, that you're thinking in innovative ways. So my vision for the center for the next 2 to 3 years, or however long I'm here, is to provide a platform for our students at Southwest Minnesota State University, as well as the emerging entrepreneurs and the existing entrepreneurs, to have an incubator that can develop their entrepreneurial skills and knowledge, where they can work together, where they can come together, where they can be equipped with coaches and mentors and resources to build a business of their dream, to contribute to the business development community, the economic development community, and the workforce community as they see fit. People do not realize how strong and mighty the SMSU Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship is. We had these talks. Mavi and I had these talks, who was very instrumental in helping me start this off. The Enactus team, the SMAT team, AMA, the student entrepreneurs, we always talk about what's next. And I always give the story, you guys just don't know how big you are. When I talk to the region, they're talking about SMSU Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And the reason why I want to make sure I started off with Doug is because when I got here in 2020, it was just a piece of paper. Now look where we at. We're sitting on 2 couches. You know what I'm saying? We got this new platform that's going to allow voices to be heard and people to speak. We're giving students an opportunity to introduce their business ideas, their talents, their skills, their knowledge, their passions to the whole region.
Can I say it?
Yeah.
You got 3 call centers.
Oh, I got 3 call centers. let that be known that I got 3 call centers.
See?
So, man, this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm humbled that you're a part of it.
Man, I appreciate it.
And, man, we're going to take this thing as far as we can go.